Good morning and welcome to the 3 p.m. bake along, now at 9 a.m. Today we are making sourdough bread. Sourdough bread takes 6 hours to prove, longer in fact. Hence we are starting very early in the morning. Yes, I've just woken up. I'm still wearing my pyjamas underneath this, but I did put on my nice lounge suit just for you guys, so that you wouldn't have to see me in my actual PJs. Mostly because my pyjamas consist of an old t-shirt and a pair of shorts. Nobody wants to see that first thing in the morning, especially not when they're trying to cook something edible. No. Hello and welcome. Hi. It's the last bake, the very last bake. Well, until further notice. If we go back into lockdown or something, I might have to pop back, mightn't I? So if there's anything you still want to bake, let me know. I can always do a little extra video for you. Right, now, this morning we are making sourdough bread. Sourdough bread takes a lot of time. The reason for this is you don't use yeast, or you don't use conventional packaged yeast. You use your own yeast. You use your own yeast that you have captured with a sourdough starter from your own home. How amazing is that? Now, this is what my sourdough starter looks like. It's all bubbly, and as I pour it around, you can see all the bubbles in your sourdough. Now, if yours doesn't look like that, and it literally just looks like a bowl of flour and water, I shall give you some tips on how to make it a little bit better. However, unfortunately, you most likely won't be able to use it. If it's not all bubbly and lively like mine is, it's not going to make the best of bread. So you may have to wait and re-prepare or try and get your starter a little bit more active before you use it. But I've got some tips on that, so don't panic. We'll have a look. And also, this video is going to be here forever, so even if you leave your starter for a few more days and bake on Monday, still going to have nice bread, aren't you? Bake tomorrow, it might be better tomorrow. Essential part of today's bake, a cup of tea. Make sure you've got one. I hope you're all in your pyjamas as well, because that's what 9 a.m. on a Saturday morning is for. So, got my video up and running. Everybody's jumping on board who needs to be here. Make sure everyone's managed to join in. And we'll get started. So let's talk about our sourdough starter first. You should have started last Saturday at the latest. It needs at least 6 days to prepare and to really build up the yeast. You should have been putting 50 grams of flour, red flour, and 50 grams of water, warm water, together each day and adding it to the previous day's mix. You could pour some off if it was getting too much for whatever container you were using. However, because you are leaving it uncovered in your kitchen overnight, you should have been leaving it uncovered, it can sometimes dry out, and this stops the yeast from working well. If this happens and you start to see a dry film forming over the top of your starter, the best way to reactivate it is not to add more water. It's actually to take a kitchen tissue like this, soak it in warm water and wring it out. You need a better quality kitchen tissue for this, because some of the cheaper ones fall apart when they're wet. So you've got your wet kitchen tissue, then drape it over whatever container you're using to keep your starter in, and just leave it like that overnight or for a couple of hours, and the yeast and the starter inside will draw the moisture from the tissue. It won't get too much moisture, it will just reactivate it. That's tip number 1. Hi everyone! I know, exciting times. This is one of those things that normally a bread takes about 4-5 hours at the most. Donuts take a bit longer, sippings take longer. This takes a week, sometimes longer than a week, months even. So let's hope it all goes well. So that's tip number 1 on adding moisture to your starter. Also, if you start to get a watery film over the top and your starter is not getting bubbly, what I would do is refresh your starter. To do this, you need to pour away half of the mixture. Pour away half of it, then add 100 grams of flour and 100 grams of water. Really give it a good mix and whisk it together, then leave it overnight. The next day, it should have reactivated and be a lot more bubbly. But it's a time thing. You've just got to leave it. You've just got to leave it and wait. So feeding it every day is essential. If you don't feed it, it's not going to develop. So remember that. If your starter is not as bubbly as mine, you may need to keep feeding it for a couple more days, pour some away. Try the trick with the damp tea towel, kitchen tissue, and see if that helps. Because you need a bubbly, active starter to be able to make sourdough bread. The rest of it is relatively easy, and I'm going to show you how to do it. So we've got our starter. You should have a nice clean bowl, and then the only other thing you will need, apart from your other ingredients, honey, salt and bread flour, is a little bit of oil to grease your bowl when we leave it to proof. But for now, let's get started with our bread. Has everyone jumped on board? Morning, Remy. Morning, Eve. Morning, Emma. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thanks for tuning in for sourdough bread. So, we need to weigh out our bread flour, and we need 500 grams of it. It's a lot of bread flour. So, weigh out 500 grams of strong bread flour. Now, unfortunately, any other flour simply will not do. You need strong bread flour to make bread with, because it's the only thing that has enough gluten in it. Now, I'm not very well versed on gluten-free bread making, so I can't really help when it comes to gluten-free alternatives, I'm afraid. In my brain, bread needs gluten. So I have no idea how these clever people manage to make bread without gluten. But it does happen, so that is something to maybe look into if you are living a gluten-free life. So 500 grams exactly of bread flour. Then we need 225 grams of warm water. Now your water should be warm to the touch but not hot. So bear that in mind. It shouldn't be too hot. If your water is too hot, it can kill off the yeast. Now the best way to test it is to fill up a bucket, and just pop your finger in. As long as it feels warm to the touch and not cold, then it's fine. Don't let it be too hot though. If it's too hot, add a bit more cold water. So we need 225 grams, and I urge you to weigh out your water because it's a lot more precise than trying to look at the mils on the edge of the jug. So 225 grams of water is going in on top of my flour. 225 grams of warm water. Pour it in straight on top. And there we go, be precise, try not to go over, just take your time with the weighing. You only want 225 grams. There we go, done. Then we need a tablespoon of honey. And we're literally just going to squeeze it out onto the spoon until it reaches the edges. Done. And scrape that in. Make sure you're kind of scraping your spoon so that all of your honey is going into the mixture. If you leave it stuck to the spoon, you're going to have about half a spoon of honey. Like that. And then a teaspoon of salt. Now my salt is quite coarse, so I need to grind it down a little bit. You can, if you've got table salt, fine salt is the best thing to use. Just a teaspoon of salt is all you need. So I'm going to mush mine a little bit, pestle and mortar style, because if it's too coarse, like if you've got larger granules, it tends to come out of your dough while you're kneading it. It's a bit of a strange thing for you. There we go. Teaspoon of salt into the mix. And then we're going to add our starter. So you need 300 grams of your starter. Now I decanted some of mine from my jar. I'll show you my jar because I put it back in the fridge. This is what I use to keep my starter in. Ta-da! And I'll tell you all about how to preserve your starter in a minute. So I'm going to put 300 grams of our starter into the mix. 300 grams. It's all lovely and bubbly. And it should smell sour. It starts to smell sour. I mean, it's not the best of smells now, is it? But that means that it's collected lots of lovely yeast from the air and is ready to make bread with. So pop a little bit more in. 300 grams is what you need. Fab. Now you just have to mix this all together. Mix it all together with a spoon or a spatula, whatever you happen to be using. Mix it well until it comes together into a soft dough. So go all around the edges, folding it in together, and it should start to come together into a dough. Lovely jubbly. And then we've got to knead it, so I hope you're rolling your sleeves. Make sure your hands are nice and clean. And we're going to be pummeling this dough for a good 15 minutes, so prepare yourselves for an early morning workout. Okay, once it comes together into a dough, make sure all of that lovely mixture is off your bowl and off your spatula. That's it. And then we're going to turn it out, and as usual, if you've made bread with me before, we are not going to grease or flour our tabletop. The reason for this being, bread is quite a precise mixture, and we don't want to add anything that isn't in our recipe, so we're not going to flour the surface. Yes, it will stick for a little bit, but the more we knead it, the less it will stick. And this is a good rule to go by. Try not to add any flour to your surface. If anything, morning Rich, if anything, add a little bit of oil. That works quite well. A sticky, wet dough makes a really soft bread. So if you can resist the urge to add flour, do so. Right, now this is a good kneading technique. Quite simple. If you've not made bread before, if you've not kneaded bread by hand, this is a great one to use as a starter kind of kneading. Pick the dough up from the side, slap it down and stretch and fold the dough over the top. Slap it down, stretch it over the top. Now at this early stage of kneading, your dough is very sticky and it wants to fall apart. So this is the best way to kind of keep it together. Stops you from getting your hands too covered in dough. You only really need your fingertips for this part of it. And it's just a good start off place. Basically, all you need to do to knead your dough is stretch and fold your dough. So we're stretching it with our slapping down process. We're stretching it out and folding it over. And you just need to keep doing this. Look at the clock. We're going to be doing this until at least 1/2 past. So continue on with this, get into a good rhythm. Jim's still in bed. This will most likely wake him up. I've woken him up with the sound of slapping dough before. There we go. Now, let's talk about sourdough starters. So you should have some starter left over. We won't have used all of what you have created. So if that is the case and you would like to keep your starter, I would urge you to do it, because even if this bread doesn't turn out quite what you want, a starter is an amazing thing. Like through history, people pass down their sourdough starters through generations, and sourdough starters can last for years and years and years. I remember being given one back when I was in college. My sister brought one home from a friend whose mom gave us some. And I remember, I didn't know what it was. I didn't even know it was related to food at the time. I thought it was some sort of science experiment. She brought home this blob of dough in a bowl and was told that she had to feed it daily. I thought it was going to turn into an animal or a human being or something. It's a fetus in a bowl. So, very strange, but yeah, it gets passed along, and that one was like years and years old. Jess fed hers for like a month or so, a few weeks, and then passed some of it along to somebody else who did the same. I don't know, actually, I don't think she ever actually made any bread out of it, which is quite amusing because that's what it's for. Now already, you should be seeing your dough come together and spread out a little bit and become a little bit less sticky. It's already turning into quite a nice dough. So at this point we can try some different kneading techniques, one of which is using the palm of your hand, holding the dough with one hand and using the palm of the other hand to stretch it and fold it over. Now this can be, you can get in there a little bit more with this technique. I would urge you to be ambidextrous as well. Try the other side, just to work both sides of the body. Get the left arm muscles working as well, or right arm as it may be for you watching this. And you can do the same with both palms. pressing it out, folding it over. Just keep going with this. Oh, yeah, so sourdough starters, you'll have some left. If you want to keep your sourdough starter and use it in the future, pass it down to generations, pass it on to the children, then all you need to do is get yourself an airtight container, like my jar, like these. Nice rubber seal, well sealed jar, and put your remaining starter in the airtight container and put it in the fridge. And that's all you need to do. Then that starter will lie dormant in the fridge for as long as you like, as long as it's in an airtight container and in the fridge, it will survive. It goes very strange, it develops a murky watery film which doesn't look the best, but that is all part and parcel of it. And I left mine in the fridge for about 10 months, 9 months, something like that, since the end of last year. Absolutely fine, still works just as well. All you need to do then, when you want to use your starter, is take it out of the fridge and leave it in a warm area overnight. Then the following day, you feed it as if you were making a new starter. So what I would do is, I would pour out your starter from the fridge, weigh it, then pour off half of the mixture and replace it with your flour and water mixture to make it up. So let's say you've got 200 grams of starter left. Weigh it out, you know it's 200 grams, pour off 100 grams, then add 100 grams of water and 100 grams of bread flour. And that's going to completely replenish your starter, and then do the same thing. Leave it for a couple of days. I did mine on Wednesday, so I did it, 3 nights before making my bread. Fed it twice, and that was plenty. Reactivated it. You can see it start to bubble up again. And then use those other tips that I told you. So if it's starting to dry out and you're getting a bit of a skin on the top, a dry skin, then take a kitchen tissue, run it under the warm tap, hot tap, wring it out so that it's not dripping. You don't want to add any water to your mixture, and just rest the damp tissue over the bowl or whatever receptacle you are using to house your starter. Leave it overnight and that will re-moisten your starter. Right, look at our dough. Our dough's looking good already. Keep going with it. Whew, fucking sweat. Don't need to do Joe Wicks this morning. Not that he does on a Saturday morning, but this is my workout for the morning. Da, 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 da. Hope everyone's well. I'm going to make a nice sourdough loaf. This is going to be an all-day process. Now, like other breads, the actual production of it doesn't take very much time. The most time is the resting. So we are going to be resting our dough for 3 hours this morning. We're coming back at 12 o'clock after it has rested for a good 3 hours. In fact, it might be later than 12 by the time we finish kneading it. Oh, so we'll come back when we're half 9, half 10, half 12, we will come back. Woo! And we will be shaping our dough at 12:30 and moving it to whatever receptacle, dish we are using to bake our bread in. And then we will come back 3 hours after that to bake it. So it's going to be a long day, but since it's my last day of baking, I thought I'd milk it. Do a recipe that is really long, takes all day. So you get 3 opportunities to see me baking and to have a bit of fun. That's what it's all about. That's what it's all about, everybody. So keep kneading your dough. We've got 10 minutes left. Oh, 10 minutes of kneading left. Oh, I've got to take off my rings. They're all full of dough. Just keep going with it. Rough with your dough. Starting to get like, see how it was quite sticky and falling apart at the start? Now it's all one nice, smooth, stretchy dough. That is exactly what we want. I like just slapping it down, stretching it over, slap it around. This is why I always think it's fun to make dough with kids, bread with the kids, because they can just do whatever the heck they like with it. And as long as they're kind of moving it around and stretching it, it will be actually good for the dough. The more it is abused, the better it gets. Work the dough. You can see as you stretch it, it starts to tear. And the dough tears, that's what we want to get past. So by the time, oh, getting dough all over me. By the time our dough is ready to prove, it will be nice and stretchy and will not tear apart when we stretch it. And that is what we're looking for. You can do this with a stand mixer. If you happen to have a stand mixer with a hook attachment, you can save yourself a lot of energy by putting your dough into your stand mixer, attaching the hook attachment and putting it on a medium to high speed for 5 minutes. If you're using a stand mixer, excuse me, you only need it to be working the dough for 5 minutes. Obviously, we need to do it by hand for 15 minutes because we're just not as efficient as a stand mixer. But stand mixers will overwork your dough if you leave it working for longer than 5 minutes. So you need to put it in your stand mixer, hook attachment for 5 minutes, and then check out your dough and see how it's getting on. Right, this dough is looking very good actually. I'm impressed with how well it's coming together as we stretch. So we'll have a look and we're going to test our dough to see if it's done. Now, best way to test your dough, give it a slap, and then I want you to pinch the edge of your dough, a nice big chunk in your hands like that. And we're going to lift it up and let it stretch. Just let it stretch. And you should be able to see through it, whoop, without it doing that, without it tearing apart. So when it's ready, you'll be able to stretch it out until you can see through it and it won't tear. And that's where we need to get it to. It's nearly there, it's not doing too badly to be fair. So keep stretching, stretching and folding your dough. Get right in there, stretch it out. Just grab handfuls and just pull and stretch it, move it around. My left hand working is not very efficient. My right hand is a lot better, a lot stronger. Stretch it out, like so. This reminds me, I watched a video the other day about how to make like toffee and saltwater taffy and things like that. And they do a similar process of stretching to make hard candies. It's obviously an American program. I don't think I've ever heard of saltwater taffy until I watched Friends. So that's what they do, and they have this big machine and they stretch the dough like that. And then they stretch it and they fold it and then they do it again. Oh, this is fun, look. I'm definitely going to wake up Jim. Stretch it, grab it by one end. This is a very technical way of kneading your dough. We're going to grab one end like a baseball bat and we're going to slam it on the surface and then fold it over. Grab the end again like a baseball bat, slam it on the surface and roll it over. Make sure it unsticks from the surface. Stretch. Stretching really well, look at that. Not tearing too much. I'm sorry. Is he watching? If he pops up, I'm in trouble. Stretch, slap the dough. Always fun. Working up a sweat. Now it's looking lovely and smooth. I think this way of doing it actually works very well. I do say so myself. Oh, there we go. See how it just unsticks straight away from your hands? That is good dough, that is. Unsticks from the counter as well. Lovely, soft, stretchy, smooth dough. We've only got 5 minutes to go, people. We've only got 5 minutes to go. And then we can leave our dough to prove for 3 whole hours. Do loads, what will I do? Not go popping over mum and dad, see how they're doing. I love going out to my parents. 32 years old. And yet I never leave the house empty-handed, or the garden at this point of isolation. Go round, sit in the garden for a cup of tea, and I always leave with a bag of goodies. Bless my mum and dad. At the start of lockdown, they were quite worried about the state of things, and they went to Costco early on and they got themselves well stocked up with the essentials, including 24 pot noodles. I asked them if they eat pot noodles. Not really, no, but it's dried, it'll last. They'll start eating pot noodles. And they've worked their way through the 24 pot noodles actually. But yeah, so I usually get some tinned goods, some pasta, some dry pasta, and if I'm really lucky, a bottle of wine. I got a bottle of wine last week when I popped in. I should be bringing them shopping really. They bring me shopping. Okay, our dough, or my dough, is looking sensational, I have to say. Really nice and smooth and soft. Batter up. Stretch. I think that works quite well. Stretch it out. Use, what is that, centrifugal force? Use the force. The force will be with us. We'll use the force to knead our dough. Keep going. Keep going. Use 2 palm technique to stretch and pull. And then we're going to test it and we're going to leave it to prove. Now, depending on how strong you are, got any muscle men out there kneading their dough, you may get to a stage where it's ready before I do. Because I'm just a little woman, and as strong as I may be, very strong, you'll probably be able to knead your dough a lot faster than me. But look at the smooth surface of the dough. Nice and smooth, no mottledness. So let's pinch our dough, let it stretch, and see if we can see through it. Letting it stretch, letting it stretch. Just letting it drop down. See how it's not tearing though. Stretching really nicely. And we can see through, and it's holding up. And that's what we want. So I'm just going to give it a few more little stretches, just for good measure. A few more stretches and folds. And then I'm going to put it into a greased bowl and leave it to proof. And that's what I'm going to do. So you need to leave your dough covered up. So I'm going to put it in a bowl, cover it with cling film, so it's airtight. It needs to be airtight to keep the moisture in. And I'm going to leave it in a warm place. Now this kitchen is very warm today. You don't need to put it in a proving drawer. You don't need to put it in a warm oven or anything like that. It just needs to be in a warm place out in your kitchen. And you know there's a little warm corner. My conservatory is very warm in the mornings because the sun gets on it. So I normally leave mine in the conservatory, nice and covered up. And we're going to leave it there for 3 hours. So that's all we need to do. There we go. We've been kneading and stretching now for 15 minutes. Swing it around. There we go, stretch. Final stretch of the kneading process. And there we go. Lovely, smooth dough. I love this part of it when it's really nice and soft and smooth. You've done that, people. You've worked that dough until it's perfect. Now I'm using a glass bowl. The reason for this is I can see along the edges of my glass bowl how well my dough is rising. Now you don't need to do this. The best thing to do is just leave it for 3 hours and your dough should prove and should rise. Now, unlike conventional dough, it's not going to double in size even in 3 hours. Crazy, I know. It probably won't double in size. So don't be disheartened when we take it out at 12:30 and it still looks a little bit small. As long as it has grown at all, as long as it has had some growth, it will be fine. So what I do is I put my dough in my bowl, cover it up with cling film, and then I make a mark on the bowl as to where it was, where it starts off. And then I can see even the smallest amount of growth. And cling film the bowl, and I'm going to put a little marker with my trusty green felt pen that I've been using to write all my recipes this whole time. And I'm just going to mark on the bowl where it sits in the bowl, and then I will know when it's grown. And that's it. Yeah, started to run out when I decided not to do any more baking. How sad is that? Right, give my hands a quick wash. Get all that dough off. And then we're going to leave our dough to freeze for 3 whole hours. Oh, it's going to take a little bit of work to get all the dough off my hands. But that's it. Step 1 is done. Leave your dough to prove for 3 hours. We'll be back 10:30, 11:30, 12:30. We'll be back at 12:30 to shape and prepare our dough. Now at 12:30, the only extra things you will need is a nice clean tea towel. Nice clean tea towel, that's all you'll need. And we're going to leave it to rest for its second lot of 3 hours, wrapped in a tea towel. Give it a bit of love and affection. But that's it. Thanks for watching, everyone. Hi, Susie. My lovely cousin Susie is here. Thanks for watching step 1, and I will see you at 12:30 for the next instalment of sourdough. Right, well, feel free to talk to your sourdough. Give it a bit of reassurance if you'd like to. Bye.